I'm Dr. Tessa Dunlop, you're with Tessa Through Time. Thank you for joining me on the YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe, ring a ding ding with that bell, notifications, comment as much as you like, go on, give me some love, there's bound to be plenty hate. Now let me just quickly tell you why we are here. Centre of the universe, Piccadilly, Manchester, and we're about to go and check out what, in my humble opinion, is one of Britain's most significant monuments. So full of that belief am I that I actually put it in my book, Lest We Forget: War and Peace in 100 Monuments. This baby over here, or over here, is one of those monuments. Come check it out with me. This monument was erected in 2018, 100 years after the end of the First World War. She was actually a female sculptor. There's not many of them, not many really successful ones anyway, sadly. Joanna Domke Gaio. And what's interesting is she lifts the idea from a very famous picture, World War I picture, painted almost exactly 100 years earlier, John Sargent Singer's Gassed. These are the men who lost their sight in the killing fields of World War I. We talk about the fallen, finite, quantifiable, dead, gone. We erect monuments to them, we remember them. But what of those men and women now left in no man's land? Bitten off, chewed, shrapnel in the eye, a bullet in the face, gassed, unable to see. It was unprecedented, or seemed to be, this sculpture, because you can get right up close and personal with it. You can touch it, you can feel it. If you're blind, you too can belong to it, be part of the story. Singer Sargent, who was the inspiration for this, he was an expat American who was famous for proper, luxurious Edwardian style paintings. He's sent by the War Commission at the end of the war in 1918 to go out and to capture ideas, scenes of World War I. He's a gay man and he channels a lot of his forbidden, don't forget, sexuality through his artwork, the pain, the empathy, and then we get 100 years on, the female touch, bringing us really close to what happened in the First World War. I do, though, have issues with this sculpture, and part of it is in the branding. Victory over blindness. It was funded by Blind Veterans UK, a charity that was originally established in the middle of World War I and has since been rebranded. I struggle with that word, victory. A brilliant young historian, Ellie Grigsby, has shown me loads of documentation about men who come back from World War I broken, bits of their faces blown off, head above the trenches, eye out with a bullet, shrapnel, artillery, God knows what coming your way. And they don't all reign supreme over their injuries. We're talking about returning to 1920s Britain. For the best, the most able-bodied, this is slump time. This is unemployment, these are riots and strikes. What happens to those men in convalescent blues, those inconvenient symbols of a halfway house between life and death? And for me, this idea of victory, that these guys come back to Britain, to places like Manchester, and are victorious, it doesn't stack up. How do we know? My response to the Manchester monument's partly been informed by Ellie Grigsby's own monument. It was her historical research that led her to campaign to have a statue, girdle cassé, not just to blind men, but to men with broken faces, the hundreds and thousands of them who were returning from the front line. St Mary's Hospital in Sidcup was opened in 1917, and that's where these men were sent, and that's where Ellie's statue, with his face half hidden, was erected in 2019. The hand, a metaphor for their shame, their life in the shadows, and the tin masks that many of them hid behind on return. And actually, the documentation I've seen for one particular man, Alexander MacLeod, he loses his eye in the First World War. He gets no kind of compensation. I very much doubt he was on the actuarial lists that identified blind people. And in fact, he's not registered blind until the 1980s, when he starts to lose sight in his second eye. By this time, he's a very old man, he's totally blind, his daughter can't cope, and guess what? In Thatcher's Britain, his repeated efforts to get money so that he can have care at home are rejected. So much for victory over blindness, so much for Britain always looking after its veterans. Because if you think the 1980s were when these men were really finding their disabilities from that war 6 decades earlier were coming home to roost in so many cases. So there we have this guy who dies in the dark He's awarded no care package by Thatcher's government. Victory over blindness, lionising our war veterans. This, of course, is built another 4 decades on after the end of the First World War. But I think it's really important to hold on to the fact these men are young here. They come back to Britain. The ageing process takes them through another war, out into a brave new world. How many people are remembering the First World War, or them, or paying for the impact of their injuries some 5, 6 decades later? So yeah, it's groundbreaking, but it came too late, and I think it sanitizes the idea of illness and injury in war. Because in the dark corners of every conflict for decades afterwards, there are men and women who struggle. There's something bizarrely provocative about the position of this statue. It's like in your face as you're rushing. In fact, the first time I saw it, I was rushing to Manchester's other train station, Victoria. But I felt like ashamed that I didn't find time for these guys to actually spend a moment or two with them, because they're right there beside me. They're not up on some arrogant plinth looking down on me. And I think that's this statue's gift, and I think they draw us in. They get the idea of pain and they sit with it. They hold us there with these men, with their experience. I've got to say, when I see this, I think of Ukraine. It's this kind of great big horrible carbuncle on the other side of Europe right now, the kind of war we never thought we'd see again, that we are seeing. And I think, how many Ukrainians are coming back from the Donbass broken like these guys? What's interesting about this monument, and it speaks to the time in which it was built, and it's a great touch, this, come to the other side of the placard, past these men, and please note, you can find out all about it in Braille. It's also worth bearing in mind that every statue tends to have, in order to arrive on the scene, they cost a lot of money, they need a lot of public support, they tend to have some level of political impetus. 2018, this was a big centenary for the end of World War I, and who was funding it? David Cameron's initially coalition government. He put millions of pounds up front to make sure we remembered the war in the right way. And one of the right ways was perceived to be redefining what it meant to be a veteran and what it meant to survive. They didn't imagine when they came to Manchester Piccadilly that they'd be hovering around this statue. I bet your bottom dollar, if this was on a plinth, they would have walked straight on by. When you come to Manchester, do what that couple did. Don't you dare burl on past without giving these boys a moment or two. Work out what you think and let me know in the comments. Thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like, and definitely let me know what you think about victory over blindness.